Empower Black men to live extraordinary lives. Shatter the stereotypes. Power Black men. Power Black men. Shatter the stereotypes. Power Black men to live extraordinary lives. Shatter the stereotypes. Shatter the stereotypes. Power Black men to live extraordinary lives.
Welcome to Shatter the Stereotypes, where the intention is to empower Black men to live extraordinary lives. This show is based on the simple idea that every Black man is capable of creating inner peace, dynamic health, great relationships, and financial abundance. Therefore, we provide insights and strategies to educate, motivate, and inspire Black men to reach their full potential and create the life of their dreams. So if you're ready for some high-octane motivation and inspiration that supports and empowers you to live the life you were born to live, get ready to shatter the stereotypes so you can build a life that lights you up and positively impacts the world. So now, let's shatter the stereotypes with your host, Coach Michael Taylor.
Hello and welcome to Shatter the Stereotypes, where my intention is to empower Black men to live extraordinary lives. You see, there's never been a shortage of Black male role models. There's only been a lack of exposure of those role models in mainstream media. So my intention is to showcase and highlight Black men who are doing remarkable things in the world. And joining me today is a man who is doing just that. His name is Emir Davis, and he is the director of Black male engagement for the Center for Black Educator Development in Philadelphia. Well, no, I don't know if he's still in Philadelphia. We'll talk about that. But anyway, he's a director of Black male engagement for the Center for Black Educator Development. So without further ado, let's welcome Emir to the show. Emir, how you doing this morning, man?
I'm doing well, Michael. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Well, again, welcome to Shatter the Stereotypes. And you are definitely doing just that. When I ran across you on Facebook, I said, man, I got to get this brother on the show because we are definitely in alignment in terms of it's important for us as Black men to educate ourselves and also to become educators, to teach. And so that's why I do this show. It's a platform that, in my opinion, I try to teach, I educate, I motivate, and I inspire. So I bring on people like yourself to encourage Black men to live extraordinary lives. So before we jump into your work, though, let's start off with a few icebreaker questions. So first of all, tell us where you're from.
From Mercer County, New Jersey.
Okay.
Yes, the center is located primarily in Philadelphia. So you were correct in that. However, I'm currently based in New Orleans.
Okay, got it. Now, tell us a little bit about your family, whatever you feel comfortable sharing.
Yeah. So my family has Southern roots. We are from Northern North Carolina. But my immediate family is born and raised in Trenton, New Jersey. And I think I just beautiful sisters. I have three beautiful sisters. I fall in the middle of my sisters. And it's growing up, it was incredible to have a house full of women to kind of shape and mold me. And it allowed me to kind of build empathy, if you will, sensitivity. But it also allowed me to really understand what it means to be a man. And to, answer the call for what we have for our families and what we have for the communities around us. And my mother and my sisters were all tremendous examples of what it means to be selfless givers. And that's something that I try to honor them with my work as an educator.
There you go. Now, shout out to the wife.
Yes. My wife. Yes. How did I forget? My wife, Amber, we've been married for 5 years. We have our fur baby, Philly, as a throwback to where we're from or where she's from. And she's from New Jersey as well.
Nice.
We met at a church function and just be this fast best friend. She's my best friend. Just deeply in love with her.
Fantastic. So name a woman who's inspired you to be who you are.
Yeah, I have to say my mother, Andrea Davis. As I said before, just a selfless giver, an educator, in a primary traditional way as a school teacher, but also in a way that she lives her life. She is a person who, in the early part, so I'm born in the mid 80s, and during that time, my mother was searching for truth and trying to break away from the Eurocentric way of which we construct our lives and our beliefs. And what that meant for her was for us to be deeply in touch with our roots, to understand that our stories as Black people do not start in oppression. Rather, it starts in triumph and royalty. And for me, I just built, that helped me build such a confidence in my skin, despite the world around me telling me, as a typical Black man, telling me that you won't make it to 21, you won't, achieve, you won't go to college, you won't be faithful to one woman, all those things. And then, quite honestly, what I had saw in my own family, just the men really struggle to remain free within their minds and free physically, as they were incarcerated to, constantly. And my mother just showed me and demonstrated to me that I'm special, and I'm called to be different. And I just, from an early age, I just wanted to do something different. I wanted to impact my family, my community. I say my mother just instilled some really great qualities and a true revolutionary in her own right.
Now, name a man that you look up to and admire.
I that growing up, so I didn't grow up with my father in the household. I didn't build a relationship with my father until it's about 23. So quite some time ago. And throughout my childhood, I pulled different aspects of like men, like uncles, cousins, sadly to say, like folks on television, right? Like just like different models as you're constructing what your idea of what manhood is, your ideas of what fatherhood is, and all those things that we associate with being a man. But I found someone around I was 14, became a family friend, and it's a gentleman who I looked up to, man. This is a guy from Trenton, New Jersey. His name is Terrence Stokes, and he was a UPenn grad, and just to me, he was someone who, despite some of the odds, right, despite the stats, what they say about folks who have zip codes in certain cities, he kind of defied those things and reimagined and what it means to come from that, when they have these markers like and being, having Black skin, and he just showed me something different. And I looked up to him, and I tried to emulate anything that he did. So yeah, I would say Terrence Stokes. If I could shout my man out, that's a man that and even now, as a pool of men that I surround myself with, that can walk life with me.
Yeah, got it. Now, if you were going to be stranded on an island for 30 days and you could take only one book with you, what book would you take?
Book. I don't want to be cliche, but yeah, I'm gonna take the Bible, but I would need some sort of like groundedness and inspiration. And I am an avid reader. Like I have this bookshelf, I have these 2 bookshelves that I need to put up. I have all these books on the floor right now, if I can show you. But I would need something that will keep me grounded and keep me inspired, have me understand the purpose of being stranded. Like, why am I here? What's the point of me being here? It has to be something, a deeper meaning. So I would say just pulling from biblical stories to help me frame, the reasoning while I'm there, and just keep my mind grounded and, hopeful rather than wallowing in despair.
There you go. Well, that means I'm going to have to make sure I get you a copy of that one there. Shattering Black Male Stereotypes.
Oh, yes. I love that.
Yeah.
That would definitely be on my bag.
I'm going to compliment you one of those. So it'll come.
Appreciate it. Yes, indeed.
Now, as a man who happens to be Black, are you optimistic or pessimistic about the future in general?
Yeah, I wonder if it's possible to be both, to vacillate between both. And I think what makes us I would say our collective as Black folk is, supremely talented and resilient. Resilience. I would say for myself, I am most days optimistic. When I see younger generations of folks who are starving to hear truth, despite that they exist in a system that feeds them a truth that is concocted, that is synthetic, right? That is pushing forth a narrative. When I hear young folks talking, they are hungry for truth, at least when it comes to history, historical facts. When I see younger folks, I see folks who are more in tune about what's going on outside of their world, right? As they get information at a much faster rate than I did, they have the opportunity to see things outside of their zip code, and then therefore formulate their own opinions and thoughts rather than relying on what's immediately in front of them. So that provides optimism for me, and just seeing their innocence as well, what provides where I vacillate to the other side of pessimistic is as I've navigated, I just think that we're going to be in this cycle constantly, but still moving, but then it's still in this cycle. I see folks who have some knowledge but no know-how. I see folks who are resistant to knowledge. I see even in my own work, right? There are partners who are committed, at least verbally, to supporting Black men educators. But then when it's time to spend resources, time, talent, and their money, there's questions and there's prolonged sort of conversations, and it stifles the work. So, but I must remain hopeful and optimistic. But sometimes hitting those barriers, you're just like, oh shucks,
Yeah.
Here we go again.
Gotcha. Now, I wrote a book titled The Cure for Onliness, A Black Man's Guide to Joy, Passion, and Purpose. And in the book, I talk about the feeling of onliness that we as Black men sometimes experience when we're in positions where we're the only person of color in an environment. So I'm sure you've been in that situation. So I'm curious, how do you navigate that?
Yeah, I've gone to predominantly white institutions from the moment I was in 5th grade. And yes, to be in those places, even as an adult, as you choose to go into, certain professions or certain companies you work for, certain organizations, they are predominantly white and they are constructed in this white ideology, right? So even if you aren't typically the only Black male or the only Black person, it still feels like a foreign place because it's not embedded in our culture, right? At least in my culture, I should say. So how do I navigate that? I think I don't know if I do it well. I'm not sure. I've felt that. I think now I look for places where there are folks who have shared experiences. I look for places that are at least curious about how their actions and how their words impact me. But I also look for places where I can specifically call out those harmful ideologies and actions for people that aren't me, right? But people that look like me. Folks that I can advocate for. And I see myself as a disruptor, as a person who advocates for what's right. I think for me, the way that I navigate those is with a healthy level of frustration that actually provides fuel for me to actually call out those things that are harmful, that make the environment less inhabitable for folks like me.
Gotcha. So now I'd like you to introduce Emir the Professional. So tell us about your organization and what you do.
Yeah, I'm with the Center for Black Educator Development, and we've been in existence since our 3rd year. And it was started by a group of folks spearheaded by Sharif El-Mekki, who's a longtime educator and principal in the Philadelphia area. And it was started in response to that low numbers of teachers, Black teachers within the Philadelphia ecosystem. And those numbers are in the numbers of the high numbers of attrition. It was just, just not a great place. So what we have a high number of Black and brown students, but low numbers of Black and brown teachers. So we started in response of that. What I do for the center as the director of Black male engagement, I'm charged with the task of addressing the high attrition and low numbers of Black men who actually go into education and then stay. So I'll work with partners, and my partners can be individual schools, they can be institutions like college institutions or any place where they are training teachers. And I work with them on not only recruitment and retention strategies. They typically come to me like, we want more Black men. Like, how do we get them in? And I always rebuttal, once you get them in, what are you going to do to keep them? What are you going to do to develop them? What are you going to do to hear them and respond to their needs? Are you going to change specific things about yourself? Right. And it's like, I guess. Right. So I'll walk with them through not only recruitment and retention strategies, but ways that they can, develop Black men to provide sound and superb, not only just sound, actually superb instruction to their students, to lead really well as leaders, and then also to be heard, right? To develop a place where they can advocate for themselves and be themselves, right? Be themselves, discover who we are and live that truth.
Yeah. Now, I was perusing through your website, and you have something there called Freedom Schools. Can you tell us what is a Freedom School?
Yeah, Freedom School. I'm going to do such a poor job at talking about sort of the origins of this. Okay. And I certainly do apologize, and I apologize to my colleagues who are in charge directly of Freedom Schools. But Freedom Schools is one of the sects that we have within the center, and we go into cities. Right now, we're housed in Camden, New Jersey, and Philadelphia. These are our main places, and we are training high school students to be revolutionary teachers. Right, so these are folks who are from the 9th through all the way up to about sophomore in college. They come during our summertime. They are trained to in our curriculum and in delivering really sound instruction. They then teach grades K through 3 literacy during the summer, and they're receiving top-notch professional development, top-notch coaching. And the hopes is that they develop that muscle, that love, and that understanding that to teach isn't a revolutionary act. And then once they go on to be adults, they are teachers. So that is I saw it for the first time this summer. It was absolutely amazing to see these young folks like really getting in there and not only teaching really great sound instructional practices around literacy, but they were just like kicking butt and infusing this Afrocentric sort of curriculum. It was dope. It really was.
See, because that's another reason for my optimism. Now, I have to admit, I'm an irrepressible optimist. That's the lens through which I see the world. And when I see people like yourself and organizations like this, it not only gives me hope, but it inspires me, because as a man who happens to be Black, I've dealt with every imaginable type of racism you can imagine. I mean, I was born in the 60s, so I'm, grew up in that environment. But when I see that, like you said, when I see these young people today, and I see them on social media starting these movements, and they're empowering each other and things you don't see in mainstream media. You're not going to see it on CNN or Fox. But these young people today, my opinion is, man, some of these kids are just amazing in terms of intellect, in terms of passion and wanting to make a difference. And so having, something like the Freedom School to ignite that fire in becoming educators, I think is so critical for our communities. Now, for me, one of the fastest growing industries in the country, actually around the world, is coaching, where you've got coaches, from financial coaches to relationship coaches to, I mean, my brand is Coach Michael Taylor, and I'm what I call a transformational coach. So a transformational coach is someone who empowers people to transform themselves from the inside out, meaning your mind and your heart. And so, again, the optimism comes from the amount of people like myself, yourself, that are actually empowering our communities that you don't see in mainstream media. But that's what inspires me when I hear stories like you just mentioned, and when I see these young people that are, with the Black Lives Matter movement and, taking a stand for, Black awareness. It inspires me. It really kind of lights me up. So again, that's why I wanted to have you on the show, just to kind of, get your opinion, your feedback, and share, because for us as Black men, I think what's missing is exposure.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of us don't see these types of stories because we're only looking at the news. We're only getting our information from mainstream news, which in most cases is going to be skewed negative. So my belief is that we have to create our own platforms to put our messages and our images out there. And that's why I launched the Shatter the Stereotypes movement, to do just that, shatter the stereotypes of what mainstream media says about Black men. So now, with that being said, though, I just want to kind of go back a little bit. I'm curious, because you're an educator, but I'm curious, what were you like in high school? Tell us a little bit about the Emir from high school.
Yeah, oh man, what was I like? Well, I like to think I was quiet, and I don't know. I think so I went to two different high schools. One was a public school, neighborhood school, predominantly white, but we had a nice group of Black and brown folks that we had grown up with, right? At least from the start, for me in the fourth grade. And I think there I had finally found my voice, right? I got there in fourth grade, and it was a predominantly white place, predominantly white neighborhood. And it just took me a while to really understand. And I grew up really couched in Afrocentric sort of values. It was great. But then you go and you place into another environment. It just took me a little while to find my voice. What helped me find my voice, and also garner some support from my classmates, was the fact that I was a good student, a really good student. And I also was a goodish football player, and also a good track runner. When I went to that, actually got me into a scholarship opportunity to go to a private boarding school, which was all white. I think I was the one Black male to graduate in my class of about 100 students. Affluent, highly affluent, and I was anything but that. And I think I became more inward, right? Much more focused on the outcomes. I was like, I want to get to college. But I was very, very tentative about building relationships with my classmates. And I look back on that, and I think it was just really couched in a lot of insecurities. One, I knew I was there. I knew I was a scholarship kid. They knew I was a scholarship kid. I was one of the few folks who had single mom. I was Black. I was, all those things. So I think it just took me a while to find my voice, but I soared on a track field, and I soared on a football field. That allowed me to just kind of, boast a bit more. But once we got outside of those arenas, I think I just became more withdrawn, and more just to myself, to people's dismay, because they're like, you're Black, you're supposed to be boisterous, you're supposed to be this, and I was like, that's not me, right? Like, I'm just, everything that you think about Black men is based on what you see in television, right? And that's not me.
Yeah. Now, you said your mom was an educator.
Mm-hmm.
When did you decide you wanted to be an educator?
Mm-hmm. when I was in high school, the second high school that I had gone to in 12th grade, I was thinking, was going to college, and we had to, part of the graduation requirements was we had to do community service, a certain amount of hours of community service. So at that time, I was like, I'm going to be a doctor. I'm going to school. I'm going to, got a football scholarship, but I also want to, be a doctor. And when I was doing my community service at a local after school program. And I was tutoring kids in math. I can't remember the grade exactly, but I saw such inequality and the education that they receive. And this was predominantly Black, after school program, in a challenged area. And I saw, again, the inequality. I saw the quality of education that I got, and I saw the quality of education that they were getting. But I also saw there was no difference between me and them. Like innately, we were the same, beautiful and pure. But unfortunately, their story was written by a system that relegated them to these low qualities of life. And that just broke my heart. So I remember going home and telling my mom, I said, Mom, I don't think I want to be a doctor anymore. I think I want to be a teacher. She immediately said, it's my mom, she wants me to do well. She's like, how much they make? And as I get, I was like, I don't know. And then, less than a doctor. So I fought that, right? I fought that even in college, I fought that. I was like, do I want to be a doctor and make X amount of money? Do I want to be a teacher and make this amount of money, which is significantly less? But my heart is there. And I fought that internal battle, even within myself. And finally, once I was able to graduate college, and then I was like, I'm going to be a teacher. Once I had overcome that internal battle externally, still from friends, from my mother, from others, right? They still question, why would you be a teacher? Why would you be a teacher? Because I want to. I think, don't you see this out here? I have such a love and a heart for it. And yeah. So.
Yeah. There's a wonderful book out called The Passion Test. And in the book, it challenges you to discover your passions, what you're truly, truly passionate about. And I've always dreamed of being an entrepreneur. That is just, I've known since I was 10 years old that I want to own my own company. It's just in me. But when I read this book, and there's several processes that you go through to kind of narrow down exactly what your passion is. And I thought my passion was entrepreneurship. But after reading that book and going through the process, what I came to understand is my passion is teaching. I absolutely love teaching. Now, fortunately for me, I was able to take that passion of teaching and apply it to entrepreneurship by starting my own publishing company, by writing books, sharing information, sharing wisdom. And so there's that sense of purpose and passion that I have by connecting with that passion of teaching. And I think as Black men, sometimes we don't even ask ourselves that question. What am I passionate about? I think too many times, we're more concerned about how much money we're going to make and how much stuff we're going to get. But I think it's really important for us as Black men to start asking those deeper questions. What is it that lights me up? What is it that I'm really passionate about? Because when we follow that, I firmly believe in the adage that, if you do what you love, the money will follow. Now, it doesn't mean that maybe it's going to be billions of dollars, but I believe when we're doing what we're passionate about and what we were actually put on the planet to do, whatever amount of money we make is going to be okay because we're doing what we love. And so I think that's a really powerful story that you just shared, because you do what you love. And not only do you do what you love, but you're making a powerful difference in the lives of others. And very few things come close to that, right?
Absolutely. I encounter people who think like that now, who have that understanding. But growing up, and certainly coming out of college and within college, I didn't realize how rare of a mindset that is, especially for Black men, right? Like, and I get it, understand how the barriers that we have to overcome. And as I talk to Black educators, right, I've Black men who have a love for teaching, a love for their community, and they want to educate kids. They want to, yeah, they just want to make an impact, make a difference in their lives. This reality that being the breadwinner, the reality of sending money home to, to not only to your immediate family that you have built, right, to your husband, to your wife, or what have you, or taking care of yourself, is also taking care of your mother, your siblings, those type of things, and also just your own passions, right? So, or your own desires. Sometimes it's that I've seen Black men struggle with that, and in many ways I sympathize the struggle that I've had to overcome too. But I love just listening to other folks who can reinforce this idea, or actually it's not just an idea, but this truth that if you follow your passions, the other things will take care of themselves. If you do what you love. But there's some real work that we have to do to create spaces for Black men to do what they love in education. I don't want to dismiss that, right? There's some real work that we have to do, and some of that is paying. A lot of it is paying us what we are due, paying us at the rate that shows that you value us. Some of that does mean pouring in resources, so that the coaching, the development, all those things. Yeah, and some of it does also include that if I am hired to be a teacher, then I'm not also tasked with doing these extra things without the compensation, right? This invisible tax that we must navigate to. Yeah. So I don't want to dismiss some of those external factors, but I certainly do agree with you that is, if I had to employ other, and admonish other Black men to do what you love, do what you're passionate about, take time to understand who you are and the origins and the legacy that you have inherited, and live that out.
Yeah. And again, I think that's one of the challenges that we as Black men really need to deal with, because obviously financial security is extremely important. And so I'm in no way advocating, teach and be poor and unhappy. But I think the deeper question that we as Black men have to ask ourselves is actually very spiritual, from the standpoint of, what is my purpose? What is it that I'm here to do, as you kind of alluded to? Because when we start asking those questions, then I believe we can sort of navigate through life a little differently, and we're no longer dependent upon the system, if you will, because we know that we're in control of our own destinies. So for example, when I launched this platform, a lot of people said, Black men aren't interested in personal development. Black men aren't interested in investing in their emotional, psychological, and spiritual selves. And I said, I disagree with that. I'm a Black man and I've done it. So I know I'm not the only Black man that's interested, but I do know that there is a hesitancy amongst us as Black men to do what I call the inner work, which is healing our childhood traumas and getting in touch with who we are authentically. And when we start doing that work, I personally believe we can find vocations that will not only pay us handsomely, but also impact the world positively. For example, writing books. I love books. I've always loved books. And back in '95, when I wrote my first book, I actually sent my manuscript to 60 different publishers. Now, this was before the internet and all of that. So when you were trying to get published back then, you basically would send a query letter to the publisher, right, to see if they were interested. And if they were interested, they would respond and say, hey, let's talk about your book. Well, I sent my book to 60 different publishers. I got 59 rejections. The last person on my list, when I finally got a response from this company, was interested in my book. And so this lady sends me a letter. She says she's interested, gives me her phone number. I give her a call. And she says, Michael, I got to tell you, I really loved your book. She says, but now she happened to be a white woman. She says, but my research shows Black men don't buy books. She says, now, your content, in my opinion, isn't just for Black men. So if you would be interested in maybe changing the title and the content a little bit, she says, I'd love to work with you and publish your book. Now, the title of the book was Brothers, Are You Listening? A Success Guide for the 90s. And I at the time, I was broke, and I sure could have used that little $2,000 advance or whatever it was going to be. But there was a part of me that said, I can't be out of integrity with myself by changing the title of something. It would be like asking a father to change his child's name, right? I said, I'm sorry, but I'm unwilling to do that. I can't change the title of the book because that's the whole premise of it, right? And so I turned down their offer, but I got committed. I said, you know what? I'm going to figure out how to do this on my own. So what did I do? I got a part-time job at a bookstore. I learned the publishing industry. I learned how to publish, how to print, how to distribute. I learned it all because I was so committed to empowering Black men and to get Black men to read books. So the moral of my story is, as Black men, if we want something badly enough, there's nothing that can keep us from attaining it except ourselves. And so we have to be willing to trust our own hearts, our own intuition, be willing to learn that which we want to do, be it education, whatever your passion is. But I think the missing piece for us as Black men has been collaboration. How do we collaborate together to help fulfill our visions and our missions? So once again, that's why I launched Shatter the Stereotypes, because I wanted to connect Black men with other Black men who were doing some things that they may not know that they were capable of doing, but when they see someone else doing it, then it lights the fire in them. For example, as an educator, I'm sure there's going to be somebody watching this video. It says, education is an important thing that you can do, and you can make a living at it, and you can make a difference with it. And so that's the whole purpose and intention of these conversations, to let Black men know that if we're willing to do our inner work, connect with our purpose, find that thing that we're passionate about, we can create extraordinary lives, because I know it's possible because I've done it. So,
wow. Yeah. Wow. What I heard in your story, if I may, what I heard in your story was you understood your true north. You understood the principles, the story that you stood on, the values that you've adopted and lived out. You understood where those values came from. And although you were hit with an opportunity to stray away from that, you said no. I mean, here's a man with incredible amounts of integrity and just intentional time to, like you said, do the inner work. We put on, at the Center for Black Educator Development, we put on what's called the Black Men Convening, which happened November 4th and 5th, this past November. And it was beautiful, Michael. It was beautiful. It was about 160 Black men and those who support our work, coming to learn together, to connect, as you said, but also these are folks who are willing to do the deep necessary work to understand our passions, understand our values, address some of our traumas, and to teach in a way that shows that, listen, like that demonstrates that we are liberated, and therefore we teach in a way that liberates our students. It was incredible, right? It was incredible. Folks who we had panelists who are typically very heady, very intellectual. Once they got hit with the vibes and they got hit with some of the questions, it immediately, their walls begin to come down and said, like, wow, this is a place where we are really, truly transforming and being vulnerable with each other. And it was a place that deeply moved me and got me so curious. Now it's this passion. You're talking about lighting a fire. It got me so curious to see the ways that I myself, as an education leader, how can I lead in ways that heals, right? That facilitates healing. You know, maybe I'm not saying I become like a guru of healer, but I lead in a way that demonstrates that I'm liberated from the shackles that, you know, kind of hold me down. And I lead in a way that facilitates that same liberation for the folks for Black men that come into my space. So I love what you said, just like the willingness, the willingness to do your inner work, the, you know, collaboration, truly, truly inspiring stories.
Now, with that being said, I think one of the most important aspects of education that we aren't talking about much in the Black community is the importance of emotional healing and how it connects to a child's ability to learn. Because when a child has been traumatized in their family environments, it's difficult for them to learn. I personally had possibly the worst childhood you could imagine. And it's taking me years of my own personal growth and development, beginning with therapy, and I've done a gazillion workshops and read tons and tons of books. And I think the most important aspect of education that we're not talking about is the role that trauma has on our ability to learn. From a Black male perspective, what I recognize is, you know, a lot of our young Black men, they are traumatized and have not had the emotional, psychological, and spiritual support to be who they are. So they create these false masks and hide behind this toughness, this thug mentality, because they're hurting. And they don't know how to move past that hurt. And the only way they know how to deal with that hurt is to express it through anger and rage. Yeah. So within your organization, do you guys have programs that are actually addressing the emotional aspect of the children?
Yes, absolutely. So there are organizations that focus on social emotional learning in a much more direct way. So they have social emotional curriculums, materials that you can pass on to teachers. Most of the work that we do are what we call these competencies, and it's based in so essentially what we call a culturally proficient continuum. And we recognize that as teachers, right, as educators, we can be hubs of trauma, or we can be hubs of healing. And some of the ways in which we induce or further the trauma are teaching in ways that are culturally improficient, that teach or don't address microaggressions, that teach in a way that's couched in some of our biases to students based on their identity elements, right? The fact that they may be Black or brown or gay, or, you know, or come from a certain socioeconomic background. Also, in the biases that we have based on our identities. So we have a series of workshops to get our teachers, our leaders, to think about some of those things and think about how does this now translate to your teaching practices, and also in the materials that you put in front of your kids. So I think it's facilitating those workshops has actually allowed me to address some of those things. I've had to go back into my Rolodex of students that I've had, and I'm like, wow, you know, when it came to David, I didn't teach him well.
Mm.
When it came to James, I had a bias towards him based on some of the identity elements that he had. When it came to my first year teaching, and I was teaching in North Philly, right? And I come with my Ivy League degree and my boarding school, diploma, and there's a privilege that I had acquired, and I taught in a way that, that created trauma for those students, because I didn't recognize my own privilege and my own bias. I thought just because I had Black skin and I grew up poor like them, that I was one of them. And that it actually wasn't true, because I had walked through life and acquired some privilege that they weren't privy to. So we, in our organization, we have those things. With my department, I do those things with a slight twist for Black men, right? It's just a ever so slight twist when we talk about Black men, because there are biases that we have that we really do struggle with. Biases around students who are non-conforming, biases for students who think about masculinity different, biases for students who for a male who's not athletic, or for us may appear weak, right? So I was talking with a gentleman before, and he was talking about how he corrects his students around sagging pants, and the way that he does that is to kind of single out the students that he feels are non-conforming, and say, like, you don't want to be like them. I'm like, dude, like that is causing tremendous amount of harm on those students who don't identify in the way that you are thinking, but also in the students who you think are masculine, right? This fear, right? You're creating this fear, this toxic fear, that they need to be fearful of a man who doesn't have traditionally masculine mannerisms and behaviors. We talked very deeply about that, right? So we, as on Black men, we have our own stuff, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so when I get into those spaces, we go hard. We go hard to address those, because we do receive harm, yes, but we also do enact a tremendous amount of harm on our community, and those that are, just ecosystems that we touch as well. And we have to address those things, right? Some of those things are based, as you said, in your own traumas and lack of knowledge, and we talk about them, and we strategize around them.
Yeah, and that, to me, what you just shared was the key to fixing our educational system. And the key is, as educators, to become aware of our own personal traumas and biases so that we can teach better. Because again, if you have a teacher that's full of trauma, she's going to traumatize her students. She or he is going to traumatize their students. So having the awareness, having the resources like your organization to give the teachers the awareness that, yeah, I've got some stuff that I need to look at to become a better teacher. And I can only imagine how difficult that can be, getting the teachers to acknowledge, their biases and their traumas. Now, one thing that I want to bring to light, something that on a personal note, from first to sixth grade, I was a straight A student. I had been separated from my mom, and I was living with my grandparents. And one way that my mom told me that I could get back to her was to do good in school, was to be smart. So as a kid, I internalized love with intelligence, with being smart. And I knew that it was the way that I could get back to my mom, by being smart. Now, during that time, though, I had no friends. I was in a very abusive environment, and my intellect was my saving grace. And I had a teacher, Miss Bussey, I'll never forget Miss Bussey, who recognized the violent environment that I was in, and she nurtured me in a way that was just, I can't even put into words how she literally in some way saved me, because she recognized my intellect. And she would always tell me, she says, Michael, the key to your success is in your intellect, in your brain. She says, you are so smart. And she nurtured a love for learning in me. And that's why I was a straight A student. Now, after 7 years of being in this environment with my grandparents, I moved back with my mom. And when I did, we were in some government housing. And so all of my closest friends, all were like myself, came from single parent homes, no father in the household, that kind of thing. And my friends, for the first time, accepted me for who I was, but they didn't know how smart I was. So I literally dumbed down to be with my friends. Yeah. I didn't let them know how smart I was. As a matter of fact, my grades declined. I started skipping school to be with my friends because it was more important to me to have friends because I didn't have that, those early years of life. And so I literally dumbed down to have friends. I'm curious of how and if you see that type of behavior, I guess, in your organization.
Yeah, and the work that I do, absolutely. I see, particularly our Black. So I share that same story, absolutely. In terms of the dumbing down, and in fact, it actually has had a long-term impact, and that's something that even as an adult I has struggled with. But yes, I absolutely do see that, right? I see Black men constantly making this negotiation between how they want to show up in certain environments, that seeing their value and not just being them, right? But being something else, right? That fits the expectations of those around. Now, see, folks who are absolutely liberated from those things and operate as if they are, and you can see the difference, right, and how they carry themselves. But these are the folks who have done a deep inner work to address some of those things that they may carry. And what we try to do is first address some of those, confront those stories that we don't want to tell. So one of the marks of a person who is liberated from those stories is his ability to share it. Right? You just did it in public, right? With thousands of people watching. I think that's a great testament to where you are in your life, and I applaud that. So we start with saying our stories, and it doesn't have to always be in trauma. That's not not everybody has the same story, but you would just wherever you are. And we look very deeply about when you are saying your stories, like how does your body turn? Like what's the affect in your voice, right? And all of those are indicators of comfort. And we just walk through that. Now, how does your story impact you? How does it impact then therefore transferred to impact those around you? But yeah, I absolutely do see Black men constantly make this negotiation, even as adults. And some of that is work that we have to do. And I'm constantly on the folks who are supporting our work, who are in charge of shepherding us and developing us and hiring us. I'm constantly developing them, right, to create a space where a Black man can be free and and feel that he is free. He doesn't have to make this constant negotiation.
Yeah, and I think that's a great way to end this conversation, because it's all about freedom. Freedom to be who we are as Black men. And it takes work. It takes a lot of work, and it takes people like yourself who are committed to making sure that work gets done. So I definitely want to applaud you for that work, man, because that's where it's at. So with that being said, I want to give you an opportunity now. How can people reach out to you if they're interested in learning more about your organization or connecting with you? How can they find you?
Yeah, you can find my organization at thecensorblacked.org. Again, that's the censor blacked.org. I gotta step my Instagram social media game up. I am so not with it. But you can find me on Instagram, on Facebook rather, at Emir Davis. That's EMIR, last name Davis, and also on LinkedIn as well. But I try to keep it positive and centered on the work that we do. And the center is incredible. So please check out their website. Yeah.
And I'll also have a link below this video, so you can just click on the link. It'll take you right to their website. So now, Emir, I just want to give you an opportunity now. Just any closing thoughts you'd like to share with the audience based on whatever's on your heart.
Yeah, I listen, Michael. I think this is an incredible opportunity. I love sharing my thoughts about the work that we do, and I have to say, I know I'm usually one to like shy away from any spotlight on me, right? And I do that. Some of that is what we just talked about, like shying away from it. But some of it is because I stand on the shoulders of giants, of folks who have poured into me. And right now, even now at the center, I have an incredible team that's supportive. So yeah, just shout out to them.
Great. Well, again, man, there are no accidents in the perfect universe. And I know that we've been brought together by divine appointment. And I mentioned earlier the importance of collaboration. Looking forward to further collaborations with you. Obviously, I've got the big dream of Too Cool Club, which you're familiar with, that we're going to be working together with, which is going to be awesome. So I just want to, again, just acknowledge you, man, for the work that you're doing and the positive impact and how you're shattering the stereotypes about Black men. And I just honor you, man. I appreciate you. I love you. I just want you to continue to do the work that you're doing, man, because it takes all of us, right?
Yes, it does. Yes, sir.
It takes all of us. Yep. So again, thank you for the amazing human being that you are.
Thank you.
I look forward to further collaboration.
Yes, sir. We'll talk soon.
All right. So this has been another episode of Shatter the Stereotypes, where we empower Black men to live extraordinary lives. Take care.